Hello there, and welcome to the Second Life Book Club. My name is Draxtor Dupre, and our guest today is prolific writer Lauren Beukes. Rhymes with mucus, as she informed me in our pre-production meeting. Lauren is from South Africa, and her new novel is Afterland, which deals with a global pandemic that kills off most men, 99% or so, and leaves only women behind, and a couple of immune men. So we'll talk about what kind of weird fantasy of Lawrence that is. How did she come up with something as far-fetched as a global pandemic, and why does she want to kill all men? Lauren
Oh,
is
I think
also
I think the latter is relatable.
okay. Well, I was not done yet, Lauren.
Sorry,
Look,
I'm so
she's
sorry.
talking over me. Oh my God. No, Lauren, hi, how are you? It's awesome to have you here.
I am so excited to be here. I cannot tell you, and I love my avatar so much. And huge thanks to everyone who's involved.
Your avatar was originally also prepared with a on a Roomba on one of those cleaning robots. You wanted the avatar on a cleaning robot, and you wanted to have it emitting rainbow particle effects. Why?
Well, so the tiger part, I want to start with that, comes from I'm not a furry, although I have furry friends, and I think it's a wonderful community. But my ex-husband used to call my stretch marks my tiger stripes. So when my daughter was born, and she, started growing into a little kid, I told her that they were tiger stripes and that I used to be a tiger. And one day she and I would return to the jungle and she would become a tiger
Wow,
too. And until she was 6, she fully believed it.
that
And it
is
was great.
awesome.
So that is why I'm a tiger. And I'm in the shark suit because one of my favorite YouTube videos is cat in a shark suit on a Roomba chasing a duckling. And so that's what we were originally going for. But I love the way this has turned out. It's fantastic.
Yeah, you were more like a tiger, and now it's more a little bit of a furry, and you have a bunch of other outfits that you can change into if you like. But I really love this, and I applaud you to go the furry route. As you said, I'm also a friend of the furries. I'm not a furry myself, but I embrace furrydom. Now I'm going to continue with my introduction that I wrote down, Lauren. I'm not a very
I'm so
flexible
sorry.
host. I'm very regimented German person. Lauren is also a former journalist, having worked in South Africa as well as the United States. Lauren has written about HIV, homeless sex workers, and a lot of other local social issues. She's no stranger to Second Life in terms of using it as inspiration for her debut novel, Moxie. So we'll talk about that too. Um, and the hilarity, and if the camera could zoom down, there's a laptop on the side here of the little desk, and the laptop has the Second Life logo. And I hope we don't get into trouble with the corporate lawyers, because Lauren, you use a world in Moxieland that is called, what is it called? Plus Life.
Plus life.
And Plus Life is the Second Life stand-in, and it's hilarious. And I had to think of a I don't know, of a fashion line for overweight people all the time when I was reading it. I couldn't get this out of my head. Where it's like, let's go into Plus Life and hang out. What are you looking at, a catalog? It's fantastic how you incorporate that, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So your avatar, the furriness of the avatar, um, the tiger, we covered that. One question that I always ask, or almost always, is how do you personally cope with being creative under COVID, under these conditions?
Wow, it's been really tough. And I think a big part of last year was just kind of, I was lucky to be in the position where I was not under financial pressure. And I know a lot of people have been, and people have lost their jobs, and it's been incredibly stressful and dealing with obviously mental health issues around that as well. So I spent a lot of last year just kind of looking after myself. I was lucky in that I had a new book coming out, so there was press around that, and I was busy with that. But I also had the income from that book, so I could really just focus on me and my kid. Homeschooling, which I think any parent will relate to, just how
Yeah.
difficult that was. Um, as well as all the anxiety. And I think it hasn't been, and there were all those memes at the time of like, now is the time to be writing your novel. And I was like, no, now is the time to just try and be sane and like try and reach out to your people and connect with others as much as possible and just try to hold on to yourself. But I am working on my new novel and it's going really well, and we can talk about that later.
How old is your daughter?
She's 12 and a half.
It's really tough. I mean, with kids in that range from maybe 5, 6 to 12, and then early teens, and how parents were left alone with this for the most part. It's a complicated issue, but it's that was something like you were saying. If you're flip, saying like, hey, this is cool, I can sit down and finally I get back into, which I did say, playing the piano, for example. But I am in a luxurious position where I don't have kids running around the house that keep me completely busy and mad at the same time. So
yep. Well, screen time went out the window. It was like, fine, be on your screen. Like, I need to work. You need to, we just need to get through this. It's fine. But I have really got into hiking, which has been great. And the other thing I got into lockdown was a game called Don't Starve Together, which is very, very dark and very cute. And so obviously I relate. And yeah, that was actually great. And it was a great way to connect with friends and to kind of run around the haunted woods and try not to starve. It felt like a good metaphor.
Now, let's talk about Afterland. Let me set this up. So Afterland, it's here on the table. This is your current book. There's this global pandemic. It wipes out almost all men. The HVC virus causes prostate cancer, and the story is about a young mother and her son who is immune, and they get caught up in this. And they are originally from South Africa, but they are in America because their father is American. The father, of course, dies, and then they get locked up in a government facility because, well, they need to experiment on why some men don't die. Why are they immune? And Cole, the mother, her sister Billy, sees an entrepreneurial opportunity in the young Miles. And I'm not going to give away what it is. People can take wild guesses. and so the action ensues. So there's a chase thing going through the whole book, a lot of action. And Billy is sort of the sister that her moral integrity is a little questionable, while Cole, the mother, is struggling with being a mother, being a good mother. So obvious question: when did you conceive of this absurd plot of a global pandemic?
So it actually, this is one of the books. It's interesting. So Moxieland took me about 4 years to write, and this took me five years to write. But every book in between has taken me a year. So I think they just needed to have their time to percolate. And yeah, but I came up with the idea 5 years ago. So I've been living in a fictional pandemic for 5 years, and then as we're preparing for the book to go to print and to be published, suddenly we're catapulted into a real pandemic. And it was quite horrifying, actually. I did not enjoy the experience and would much rather be in an alternate universe where this is not happening. Please.
The interesting thing about your pandemic is the first thing that I think is super important is that it affects everyone. I mean, every man equally. They may be rich, they may be poor, but they're all die. I mean, that's fundamentally different from what we're going through here. Was that something that was important to you to have? Because we see in a scene, I see this in a great film. There's these huge underground bunkers that the super rich preppers are having. There's a bunch of articles with pictures out there. You can Google them. These things do exist. Multi-story underground bunkers, but it doesn't help them because they die anyway. And the COVID-19 pandemic that we have now is obviously affecting people very unequally.
It is. And, having grown up in South Africa, and obviously this will come much more in when we start talking about Moxieland, which is an apartheid allegory, I'm very aware of wealth discrepancy. We live, as a South African, I live in a country with one of the highest Gini coefficients in the world, which is the divide between rich and poor. So it's something I'm fundamentally aware of. And it definitely was something that I kind of wanted to play with, that you are not protected from this, that it doesn't matter how wealthy you are. It will affect you.
And the other interesting thing is that life kind of goes on, which is so absurd. You write this really well. I mean, that is actually a similarity where people are pretending. I mean, I got really mad here with the school district who just pretend everything is fine, and and teachers had anxiety, the kids had anxiety, and people go, yeah, it's fine, we'll go in there. And in your book, life also goes on. The man just disappeared, but the women kind of make do, and there's still bars, there's restaurants. I mean, there's obviously abandoned places and whole stretches of abandoned parts of town. But other than that, life seems to be going on. Of course, the government becomes a little bit more authoritarian. Ooh, look, the shark is now sleeping on the couch. I put this. This is just awesome. This is.
Excuse me.
No, please. I know. I can go on tangents, Lauren. It's terrible.
No, I wasn't actually sleeping. I was just trying out different poses.
You know what? I'm going to voluntarily infect myself with the pandemic of your book, so I don't have to live.
Okay. No, but this was something that was really important to me when I conceived of the book. The pandemic was actually just a way to get there. I needed to get rid of most of the male population, and I didn't want to do an alien world where men have never existed. I wanted, a world like 50 years from now where men have died, or 50 years ago. I wanted to do something that felt very real and very now. Mm-hmm. So it's set 3 years after the pandemic. And the whole idea with that was to really explore this idea, debunk two different ideas. The one is that a world of women would fall apart, because yes, there are male-dominated careers where, for example, satellite technicians or deep sea divers who maintain the, deep sea underwater cables which maintain the internet are generally men. Pilots of shipping containers as you come into the harbor are men, and that's kind of a father-son thing, and it's passed down, and it's incredibly macho. So there would be roles that women would have to step up into and get a lot of training really fast. Mm-hmm. But the world would hold. This is not a dystopia. This is not The Road. This is not Walking Dead. Like, the world is held together. And actually, there's been a kind of strong reaction to some things previously, which is all kind of happening in the background texture. Like, places like Colombia are so sick of narco trafficking and the violence which came with that, mm-hmm. that they basically say to the US, we're going to stop coffee imports until you legalize cocaine, because we don't actually have time for this. We're not going to go back to where we were. We actually want to learn from this. We want to grow. We want to develop. And there's socialist states emerging, but then there are also people who kind of want to hold on to the patriarchy, mm-hmm. because the patriarchy is a system which has worked for thousands of years, and it's very easy to step into. And just because there are no men doesn't mean you're not going to maintain an unfair status quo or an unfair power system.
Exactly. And also, as a matter of fact, I mean, one of the cults, and by the way, if the camera could zoom out a little bit, there is a cult or a church, the Church of All Sorrows is factors really big in the book. And actually, Ruby, who built this amazing set that we're on, I hope we have a tip jar in the corner. Yeah, we do. If the camera zooms out, there's a flag, and Ruby made this flag of the logo of the Church of All Sorrows with a teardrop coming out of sort of a sun with the rays, and in the back there is a bus. If you want to go to the Church of All Sorrows, you can go there, and they hand out flyers that says, you just have to say, I'm sorry if you're alone and lost and stuff like that. But their whole spiel is, Lauren, if I read this right, I mean, these are obviously all women, but they feel what they say basically is that women need men to exist. I mean, they're just completely regressive in their stance.
Yeah, and
incredibly anti-feminist. Yeah,
definitely, and it's quite biblical, and it's taken from all the bad parts of the Bible about like what a good woman should be and what a good wife should be and what a good mother should be. And that's a supplicant, and that's someone who's submissive, and not in the sexy way, but in allowing men to like rule the world. And the fact that it's woman's sin, which has meant that God has punished us by taking away the men. And if we can just apologize enough, if we can just repent enough, then maybe God will forgive us and bring back the men. So, of course, when unbeknownst to them, a boy falls into their laps in disguise, that becomes like a pretty big deal. But that also plays into kind of the chosen one mentality. Miles, he is one of the last boys on earth. He's not the only boy. This is not Children of Men. He's not the savior of all mankind. But there are a lot of people who want to lay claim to him for different reasons. And that Harry Potter mythology, that Jesus Christ mythology, where you are the chosen one, you are the one who's like been blessed and can save the world and have the special powers, is very seductive.
And he actually gets attracted. Miles, the boy, his mother disguises him as a girl, and he's actually cool with it, which I find awesome. I think that's also in the subtext, which I really like, that Miles is completely fine with sort of impersonating a girl, and it's very fluid that way, and he finds what the Church of All Sorrows has to offer in terms of explanation super attractive. And that is something that really resonated with me, because my parents were extremely afraid that when I was that age that I would fall into the hands of a cult. Maybe there was a thing in the 70s, I don't know. But I kind of had that same thing with my son when we lived in America. And so when I read this, I was breaking out in cold sweats, Lauren, I'll tell you honestly, because the mother is struggling with this, and the mother, I admit it, I read everything these days through the lens of a parent, frankly. So I associate with this and with the struggle of being a good parent, being a strong parent, and Miles is just getting like totally into this whole cult thing, and he really likes it, and it provides all the answers. Yeah.
But I think that's it. It is, and I think for all of us in the last 14 months, what we've been lacking is answers. What we've been lacking is certainty. Yep. And that's incredibly attractive. Here is this church which has all the answers. They know exactly how things work. And these are the reasons this has happened. And this is how to fix it. I mean, God, sign me up.
Alfonso actually says here in the chat, the Satanic Panic. That is true. That was a huge thing in the 80s, and there is a great documentary about Judas Priest, the heavy metal band. They were on trial actually for the very tragic suicide of a teenager. Sorry, go ahead.
I actually I interviewed the head of the Occult Crimes Unit, which was a real police unit in South Africa for about 6 or 7 years. Who genuinely believe that Satan exists and dealt with a lot of kind of satanic crimes, and but also made things really difficult for people like me who played Dungeons and Dragons when I was a teenager, because they'd go to schools like, obviously lecturing about the evils of that.
Wait, they can actually, but wait, what?
This is a whole other conversation.
They show up in school. They let them in school and let talk to the kids.
Man, it was like the late 80s, early 90s. Yeah,
oh my God. Okay, well, we'll do a separate show on this. The other thing, because I have so much stuff that I want to get to. The other thing that's really important is that Cole in the book is a white mother, and Miles is a black child. And a question that I wrote down here, because they get caught in America when the pandemic hits. So they're trying to get back to South Africa. And there's always this undercurrent of threat. I was wondering here, the question that I wrote down, would it be safer for them in South Africa, and why, than in America?
Would be. Yeah. So it's been really interesting. And I try to be very careful about this. I try to be very careful with all my writing and to kind of speak to people, to people's experience, and to try and reflect that as much as possible. So I interviewed friends of mine who have, mixed race couples who have, a white wife or a white husband and a black, vice versa. And, what the experience of like raising kids biracial or black in America, and how terrifying that is. And one of my friends actually she's one of my best friends. I'm not going to name her because apparently the police track this kind of thing. I don't know about in Second Life, but we'll see. And she talked about, taking her kids to the Black Lives Matter protest when they were very young, and how upsetting it was to see people staging a die-in, for example, where the people are like lying down and saying, "I can't breathe." Yep. And she actually grew up in South Africa. She's American, but she grew up in South Africa and under apartheid, which was crazy. And she talks about the difference between South Africa and America is that in South Africa, people wear their racism openly, but in America, it's much more covert and you can't really tell. But certainly, the majority of our population is black. And there is a lot of violence, and a lot of that violence is people living in poverty and gangs, and it is black on black violence. but the threat from cops to Black people is not the same as it is in America.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there is a big difference. You know, like I have friends who, like, you know, their kids are becoming 13, 14, and they're terrified for them. Like walking to the shops, and they're like, what's going to happen when they drive, or the routines that they have when a cop approaches them if they're pulled over. And it seems mad.
So that's the conversation that every Black parent has with their children, especially when they're boys. And it sounds to me that this is not something that you have to have, despite the violence. You don't have to have that conversation in South Africa necessarily, that you will get pulled over by a cop and shot because you reach into your pocket for your cell phone.
No, look, the cops are more likely to ask you for a bribe.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, we do have a lot of gender-based, like we have a lot of the majority of homicides in South Africa are men. But we have a lot of gender-based violence here, and that's against gay people and trans people and women. And it's, we're not going to get into that conversation because it's too depressing and horrible. But my friend N.R. Brody recently wrote a book about, violence against women, gender-based violence in South Africa. And there's a lot of reading you can do on that kind of thing.
I'll ask you at the end to recommend some books, and you can type it in the chat, and we'll save it, because it is so refreshing and important to have. I'm not trying to have this show US centric or Eurocentric. It's just, it just falls into place that way. I don't plan it. I mean, I reach out to authors, and some authors get back to me and some others don't. And, I'm just interested in everything.
Of course.
And so it's awesome to have somebody here from South Africa. I'm reading a few books, and I just don't know anything about South Africa. It's actually quite frustrating.
Well, if we have an SF audience in here in particular, I can definitely recommend some amazing South African science fiction and fantasy writers who've been coming up over the last couple of years. But we'll do that at the end.
We'll do it at the end. And now let's go read, and you're going to read us an excerpt from Afterland. And if I could ask you to stand up, and there's a book stand ready for you here. If you just stand and walk forward to that book stand.
Can I remember how to stand is the question.
You have to press the stand button on the bottom. Between chat and speak is a stand button.
Nope.
On the bottom of your screen.
No.
A little bit to the left.
Right, I found it. Walk stand. There we go. Okay,
there you go.
Look, I'm standing, and I'm going to change outfits.
Look at this shark. The shark can
so
stand.
Good.
And if you're just tuning in, this is Lauren Beukes, not Lauren Beukes as I thought she was named. Lauren Beukes, the author of many fine books, and her latest book is Afterland, and she just changed her outfit, and now Lauren just needs to go forward, turn around. This is the biggest fun that we have here at the book club.
Watching people just mess around and not be able to walk. Yes,
exactly. We want to make fun of noobs. That's all we do here.
This is definitely my normal life, failing to walk. Yes,
go.
Getting there.
Yes, and that's it. Stop right there, and let's put the book stand in frund of you, and you're
Thank
you're
you. That's probably much better. All right. So this is a section which takes part early in Afterland, and it's the day Devon died, which is Cole's husband.
And Devon is Cole's husband, and again, Cole is the mother, and Devon is the American husband. And the reason why they're in America, because he had I think some sort of temp job in the Bay Area, and that's why they're sort of caught completely, well, coincidentally, in the wrong country.
Yeah, and not able to fly. The day Devon died. All packed, ready to go. Grief like an extra suitcase that shifts its weight capriciously between two lights and all the mess in the world. Cole comes out of the bedroom with their baggage to find Miles sitting cross-legged on the carpet beside the silver government-issue body bag, which is unzipped halfway and gaping like a chrysalis. He's holding his father's hand, not looking at his face, reading aloud to him from a graphic novel propped in his lap. And then Nimona says, "Why would I kid about disintegration?" His finger drifts to the next panel, following the trajectory. Force of habit. Because his dad isn't going to be looking at the pictures anytime soon. or ever again. She put the death notification decal in the front window 24 hours ago. A big black and yellow sticker with reflective chevrons. Plague here. Come collect the body. No, longer than that. 32 hours ago. Too long to leave them here with a dead body. Or here at all. 10,000 miles from home. She sinks down next to her guys on the floor, the living and the dead. Devon's face is empty and foreign without the life of him. An uncanny valley 3D printed doll of her husband. They've been living with the anticipation for so long, inviting it into the room with them, every conversation, making jokes about it even, that the reality of death, the profane and profound guest late to the dinner party, is a letdown. She thinks, oh, is that it? Is that all? Dying is hard. Living is hard. Death? Overhyped. First there was a person, now there is no person. She recognizes that this is self-defense. She's just tired. Tired and numb, the sorrow woven through with anger. Worst friendship bracelet ever. Cole reaches out to touch her husband's not him anymore face. The pinched pain has been smoothed away from his eyes, his mouth. The bristles of his number one haircut are soft against her palm. She won't be cutting his hair again, or rinsing the clipper blade out, a swirl of fine dark hairs like iron filings in the sink. They prepared the body according to the illustrated instructions in the FEMA Mercy Pack, which also comes with rations and a basic first aid kit and a water purifier straw. She clipped on the white ID tag, wrote down his name, social security number, time and date and place of death and his religious denomination, if applicable, for whatever cursory ceremony is to follow. The leaflet doesn't cover what comes after, but they've seen the footage of the new incinerators, the refrigerated containers with body bags stacked high. It was shocking the first time. But what else are you going to do with 1 billion corpses and counting? The number still sounds implausible, dreamlike, not including other related casualties, that chilling term. She added layers of rituals to counteract the impersonal bureaucracy so that they could say goodbye. They washed Evan's face and hands and laid his puffy coat over him, Miles's idea, in case he gets cold. They crafted origami replicas of things he might need for the afterlife and tucked them in around his body, her idea, and held a glow-stick vigil, telling their favorite, silliest, bestest stories about his life, until Miles went very still and very quiet, and she realized that all this busy work wasn't going to take away from the essential truth. Man down. Her son half lifts the graphic novel towards her like an offering. Do you want to turn to read? She squeezes him under her arm, her boy, alive and warm, even with the dark circles under his eyes and grief vultured on his shoulders. How long have you been sitting with him? Dunno, he shrugs. I didn't want him to feel lonely. Did you read the whole book already? I skipped some parts. I wanted to get to the end before... Yeah, she stands up. Nothing worse than an unfinished story. Right. She pours out 2 bowls of oats, powdered milk, protein bars on the side. Breakfast, lunch, supper of survivors. Miles's voice from the living room, now doing an evil villain accent, wry, sardonic, interrupting her thoughts. They had to choose the room filled with a deadly magical substance. And then, startled, Mom! Headlights swipe across the living room window, catching the reflective chevron of the decal. Stay here, she says, thumping down the bowls. Why? Miles, always the questioner. In case! Devon had tried to reassure them that testosterone was the key ingredient in all the worst-case scenarios, as if women weren't capable of evil fuckery in their own right. So sexist, Dev, she rebukes, running out into the street. The FEMA van is pulled up outside, motor running, headlights aimed in twin halos at the front door, so she has to shield her eyes as she steps out. 2 women clamber out, awkward in their bulky hazmat suits. Plaganauts, she thinks. She can't see their faces under the glare of the headlights, or in the blank glass of their helmets. The larger of the 2 yells aggressive, Stay where you are! It's okay, the other one calls. She's not armed. I'm not. Paul raises her hands in confirmation. Can't be too careful, ma'am. Tall and White apologizes, moving in, her heft blocking the light. You'd have to be strong in their line of work, heaving corpses around. Where's the body? You next of kin? It's my husband. He's inside. An aftershock of grief nearly slams her to the ground because they're here, help is here, and this seems like a license to fall apart and let someone else handle this. But Miles, always Miles. Control, one adult, the short of the pair says into her radio. Did he have any complicating conditions we need to know about? Like what? Cole almost laughs. Cholera, HIV, measles, excessive bleeding or decomposition, weighs more than 300 pounds, anything that'll make him difficult to move. No. How many days dead? Almost 2. You took your time. It's hard to keep the bitterness out of her voice. Standard, Stumpy dismisses her. Less than 48. You got any basic human compassion in that van? Ran out 3 weeks ago, Stumpy hits back. We are sorry for your loss, ma'am, the other says. And we have our own. You have to understand, we're on the front lines here. I'm sorry, of course, I'm sorry. It's just, it's a lot to deal with. Show your sentiment, man. Here are the papers. We'll be taking him to central processing for mandatory tests. You can claim the body in 3 days, or we can do the cremation and notify you when his ashes are ready to collect. No. We've said our goodbyes. You don't need to notify me. We're leaving right away. Your prerogative, shrugs the bigger woman. Maybe put your contact details down anyway, your forwarding address or other next of kin. People change their minds. All right. It's so easy to follow instructions. The plague order is old business again. Just sign here and here. But then she spots Miles's face peeking through the window, round and scared, and she softens. Your little girl? My son. You shouldn't be traveling with him, she says. This is still a free country, isn't it? A rut of concern forms between her eyebrows, tugs her mouth down. Ma'am, my professional medical advice is that you shouldn't move him while he's sick. You want him to die in the back of your car? Better than here, Cole says. Not that it's any of your business. And then the words she'll regret forever. Besides, he's not dying. He's not even sick.
And that is Lauren Beukes reading from Afterland. Thank you, Lauren. I'm so glad that you chose this excerpt because, I mean, big round of applause, please. This is really heartbreaking, and I'm sure a lot of people here in the audience also had folks pass away during the pandemic, and this is just, I mean, this is incredibly tough to lose someone during the pandemic, and of course, here you're also setting up that Miles is not even sick.
Yep.
And she shouldn't have said that.
Definitely not.
Now you can sit back down here.
I'm trying.
No, take your time. Take your time.
Sorry, newbie. I'm such a noob. Wait, I found it. I did it. Ha.
There you go. So Afterland, one question that I had here is with the ending, and we don't have to give away the ending, but I thought the ending was so cool with Billy, Cole's sister, and Billy is working with criminals, with hardcore criminals, and she is there's a beautiful ending that involves a transgender nun.
Mm-hmm.
And Billy, that ruthless,
Bastard.
bad sister. Yes. Was that ending planned?
Yes.
Or did you just sort of arrive there and go like, wait a minute, I could do this?
So E.L. Doctorow said that writing is like taking a road trip at night. You always know where you're leaving from and where you're going to, but the rest of the way you can only see 20 feet ahead of you in the headlights, and you just have to stay on the road. And that's always been really resonant for me. Although I think mine might be more of a hand-drawn, like, pirate map, where I know the treasure might be under those palm trees, and I think I know what the treasure is. And I've got to pass, like, a Skull Rock to get there, but sometimes Skull Rock looks like a different rock. So I'm definitely, I'm part plotter, part pantser. I normally know my endings. I know what I'm moving towards, and I know kind of what the big high-stakes pieces are going to be. But a lot of the time, I'm also just figuring it out, and that's really exciting to me. That is the subconscious magic of writing.
Right. I mean, that's also the excitement because you keep yourself excited with that, that high wire act a little bit. You just, maybe I'll take this detour and look under this rock if the treasure is there and see what happens.
Yep,
I think
absolutely.
Pan here earlier. This is he just mentioned. I'm scrolling back in a local chat because he mentioned that Pan. If you can repost this, you said something. Oh yeah, somebody says, or he said, Pan says they say that mothers replicate patriarchy more than anyone else.
That is a really interesting point. Women do definitely prop up the patriarchy, and women are definitely complicit.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for me that was most resonant when my daughter's dad worked on a feature film set in Kenya called Price of a Daughter, and it shows it's about female genital mutilation, and it shows it's the woman who circumcised other women. Circumcise is a loose term. The woman who violate and mutilate other women. And it's the older woman who trying to maintain tradition, and they show a real woman in this film who is a circumciser/mutilator, and she's got these pulsed hands holding this rusty razor blade, and it's just so harrowing. And for me, that was kind of a very strong image that I wanted to work with as well. That a world of women is not going to be necessarily kinder and gentler. And yes, we're going to be able to walk at night, but also women are capable of all things. We are evil, we are, venal, we are greedy, we are, corporate stooges.
It's similar to that comic. I saw a comic.
Why the Last Man?
No, I saw this editorial cartoon where these brown kids are running around and they're looking at bombs flying down. That's obviously sort of imperialist, probably U.S. And they say, "Oh, finally, we're getting bombed by brown people." Because everybody says, "Oh yeah, we now we have a black vice president and we have all this wonderful stuff." And I mean, this is just an incredibly reductive way to look at things, generally speaking.
It is.
Now you are in the chair. Could you click the chair again and choose a sit? Sometimes the chairs are a little weird.
All right.
Here in Second Life. And speaking of Second Life, like I said earlier, you are no stranger to Second Life. And apparently, Second Life was part of the inspiration for the book Moxie Land, which came out in 2008. When you wrote it, Second Life was extremely hot, and it was cooking. It was the shit. I can't swear on this program, but and this show is not about me. But I'm going to put a slide up here because back in those days, my avatar was on the homepage of PBS because of the Virtual Guantanamo Project, and my avatar in a orange prisoner jumpsuit was in fact on the homepage. I don't know for how long, maybe just a week or a couple of weeks or a month even. So that's how hot it was, and you put that into your Moxieland book. But Moxieland is not really it's not about gaming. Um, it is about four protagonists in South Africa that in their 20s that are looking at a tight corporate environment where there is very little room to be creative or sustain a creative artistic lifestyle or an authentic lifestyle of doing social good. What is Moxieland? What is that term? What does that mean? Why is the book named Moxieland?
It was originally called Branded, but that seemed too on the nose. And I was looking for kind of an evocative title like Cloud Atlas or Luna Park or Pattern Recognition, the books that I was reading and really enjoying at the time. So it is very much kind of about this virtual world where, it's Moxieland in the book is a kid's game, but it's, I guess, a proto Fortnite where everyone really just tries to like F each other up and like really, these kids just acting horrendously.
Actually, I think it's a mixture of Animal Crossing and Second Life. If you ask me, yeah, I think you invented a whole bunch of things. I mean, you kind of predicted the future, but you also predicted Animal Crossing, but just with killing each other on top of it.
Yes, totally. Animal Crossing with killing. That's what we definitely need, right?
But you said earlier Moxieland is an allegory. That's actually more my question because it is really that stand-in for what life really is. It's everybody against each other in this neoliberal hellhole, basically.
Pretty much. And how artists are co-opted and commodified. And I was seeing a lot of that at the time. I was working as a journalist, And we had these secret tobacco industry parties. Tobacco industry advertising became illegal in South Africa. So you weren't allowed to like have glossy magazine ads or these riveting kind of ads in the cinema.
Mm-hmm.
So what they did was they started having these underground parties, and you really they were cool. Hey, like you had to be in the know.
Mm-hmm.
You had to know that the cool bar that you went to, that the Joburg bar in Cape Town, would have a sticker at the back, kind of as you were going to the bathrooms, and that sticker had a phone number on it, and you had to text that number, and then you would get a secret code with instructions to like meet on Sunday the 15th at 2 p.m. in the afternoon. At the train station, and then there would be this party train which cost like R1,000,000. So I guess $150,000 train that they'd done up with like 5 dance floors, and it took you to a secret location in the Winelands, and Carl Cox was playing, and
that was just to sell cigarettes.
Yeah, and it was because they suddenly had all this budget, and it was freaking awesome. But so many people I know were like working for them and doing design for them, or like camera crew. And it just felt like this incredible commodification, but at the same time, it really was. It was very cool.
And the commodification has not gotten better. Sorry, newsflash.
No, it hasn't.
It's really crazy, and it is an incredible timely book. And Toby, the streamer, one of the characters, he has a very popular stream, 500,000 viewers per day or something like that, and and he's problematic. I mean, he's troubled. He's also drug addict.
Awful.
Well, but he has some good impulses, I would say. I'm always trying to see the good in him.
That's
he's
very
awful,
kind.
but he has some good impulses. But maybe I'm totally excusing him now, because I think like
he's very entertaining.
He just does everything for his stream audience. See, I actually thought like, okay, maybe he wants to do good, and then just later he goes like, yeah, I also can sort of cash in on this a little bit. But anybody who does streaming, I mean, even people on the left or progressive side, if they're on YouTube, they're commodifying themselves to some extent, or their brand. So the purity question that you kind of play around with in this book is fantastic. I mean, to reflect on this it's powerful.
Thank you. I was also really trying to play with this idea of a corporate apartheid state, looking at how, I think it's very easy to forget that apartheid in South Africa, which was this incredibly horrifyingly violent racist regime that privileged people like me, white people, over the majority of the country of Black people, was, it ended in 1994. That's so recently. And there's so many wounds of history that are just so raw under the surface right here. And I was really interested in how, we've been through the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and the Rainbow Nation, but how might apartheid rise again? And it's through wealth, it's through corporations getting involved in governments, and having too much pull and being able to, and corruption and all of that. And I really wanted to play with that. And I also wanted to play with the idea that we're controlled by our cell phones. And this has a really interesting analog to activist culture in kind of the 70s and 80s in South Africa, which everything changed in the townships, which are kind of the shacklands and the really impoverished areas where Black people were kind of forced into by the apartheid government. And suddenly the landline telephone was introduced, and suddenly people could organize, and suddenly they could make phone calls. And that was really interesting to me. And also the way, our special branch, which is our incredibly horrifying secret police, would go and spy on activists, and they try and infiltrate them and try and take notes. And of course that I have analogs to that happening in Moxieland. There's a corporate character who gets asked to choose sides, and an activist character who might be being manipulated by shady forces, but he's trying to do the right thing, but actually it's really hard to fight the system.
Real quick, because here in the local chat, Ava and folks are talking, she doesn't understand streaming. Why would somebody else watch someone playing a game? This is not what the book is about.
No.
We're talking about streaming can be streaming of a lot of things. I mean, just check YouTube. There's a whole variety of cats and incredibly well crafted, very deep analysis of philosophical themes. There's a great channel called Philosophy Tube, for example, and others.
ContraPoints.
ContraPoints is a fantastic channel, absolutely. So, this is what we're talking about. We're talking about here how these characters struggle with how they yeah, how they beat the system. And what you mentioned, Lauren, with the cell phones, the cops have figured that out, and they basically um, they have sort of, like, how would you describe it, like electroshocks in the phone. So this is how the cops can subdue protesters. And the riot control is all about cell phones, because every with all that connectivity comes, of course, easier control by the powers that be.
Absolutely. And, the worst thing which can happen in the Moxie society is that you are disconnected, which
Hmm.
means, your phone is taken away, you lose internet access. And yeah, it's really, it is absolutely the worst thing that can happen. And I think the fact that the UN has entrenched access to the internet as a basic human right, together with, a right to water and a right to shelter, just shows you exactly the kind of world that we live in right now, where being connected and having that connection to other people through the internet is so vital to who we are and how we live.
Now if the camera could zoom back a little bit, and we have to be very tight today because our camera person has to go to another meeting, but we have until the bottom of the next hour in the post game. We can read more and we can talk more. But if the camera could zoom out again, and people can explore this later on, actually on the far side, there's Ataraxia from Afterland, where you can go down in a bunker maybe. But also the Moxies, these cute little animals. There's Flafoki here in the front. Here is a Moxie. If I could ask Shyla the Super Gecko to come on stage and read us just a tiny little snippet of Moxieland, that is on the fun side of things, where the character Toby first gets introduced to the game. And Ruby, if you could bring up the book stand from the little book stand that is hidden underneath. Um, it's right there. And Shyla is going to read to us from Moxieland, where, oops, I I just I was just moving myself to a different place, and now I'm drinking a cup of tea. Um, Ruby, if you could bring up the book display from the bottom there, please, for Shyla to read. And Shyla is going to read to us where
Can
Toby
I
first. Yes, go ahead, Lauren.
can I just say what an honor and like how exciting. I love hearing other people read my stuff. Thank you, Charlotte.
Sometimes authors come in and they really don't like to read. We honor that, of course.
Of course.
People have different, you know, uh, different takes on their own reading. I mean, I love all the reading, but I understand when some authors may have a little anxiety. So Shyla is reading to us a little bit how Toby experiences the game. Go ahead, Shyla.
Okay. I stagger over to my console, clip the Moxie chip into the game socket, and instantaneously there are little blobby monsters bouncing all over my projector walls and singing. I reduce the display to just one wall, skip the jangle, choose the first character I'm offered, some furry blue thing with oversized paws, romper stomp, special move, the shaker quake, and connect to the game world along with the 1,487,763 other players currently online, 88% of whom are in the 8 to 12 demographic. The remainder are like me, gate crashers cashing in on the system, or maybe pedophiles looking to hook up. I suspect the former group may be the more evil of the two. I haven't made it 2 steps from the entry portal, let alone figured out the effing buttons, when 3 furry blobs land on top of me, all claws and teeth. Shit! Wait! The wall blanks suddenly and Moxie fills the screen. Cause Moxie is always watching. He waves a stubby little paw in disapproval. So sorry. You have been booted from Kiwi Pop for your bad behavior. If you promise to play nice and now swear and not swear anymore, you can play again for sure. I'd forgotten the vocal interactions. I turn it off. No sense betraying my age by my voice, and click on the I promise to behave button. Die, newbie scum, yells the one called Flafoki in the little girl's voice, brimming with malice. I fight back, punching and kicking, but they've got more experience and there are three of them. I've just got the hang of the shaker quake, knocking Flafoki off her feet and doing some serious damage when one of her little chums takes me out with a blow to the head, KOing me one time. The screen blanks again. So sorry. You have died, but at least you tried. Would you like to again? You've still got 9 lines out of 10.
And that's it, Shyla, the Moxie reading from Moxie Land. And we have avatars to give away. And there's an avatar vendor on the side of the tent. You can pick it up, and there's a bunch of Moxies in there, including a tiny Moxie, a super tiny one. And this is courtesy of Skin Stealer. It's actually modded one of his existing avatars. I asked him if he can make it a Moxie. So big thank you, Skin Stealer. And now it's the time again where Lauren has to stand up again and read. And now she's going to read an excerpt. And while you enter the front of the stage, and I have to actually change the book cover because you're reading from. I was too busy drinking my tea. Take your time going forward. Let me set up the excerpt. So Kendra in Moxieland is an art student who finds another source of income, which has to do with basically branding. And she actually has an art exhibit, and the art exhibit has a bunch of other artists too, including her sort of weird boyfriend. Now that guy is a total jerk,
Yes.
right? We can all agree on that. Uh, I'm sorry, like I was thinking, like Toby's such a great guy, and Lauren, like, what are you reading? Did you read my book? But no, and there's also a super famous artist there who does some strange stuff with sort of biomaterial. And Kendra, our protagonist here, enters the scene, enters the hall, and it goes from there.
So Kendra has also been sponsored by a major corporation that makes her basically high every time she drinks their soft drink.
Right. It's a soft drink. Exactly. That's what I was going to ask you before. The soft drink is called Ghost. And whenever she drinks that soft drink, she has people can see sort of the brand on her forearm, I think, the logo of the soft drink. And she was injected with some stuff that in combination with the soft drink makes her high. It's like Red Bull on steroids, if Red Bull would sort of interact with something in your bloodstream.
Like nootropics as well. Like it really makes her more focused. You know, it's like little mini baby superpowers. But yeah, okay. So I'm feeling fractal by the time I reach Propeller. There is already spillage out the doors, which can only be a good sign, seeing as it's just gone 6:30. But it makes me feel edgier. You're late. Jonathan latches onto my arm at the door and swishes me inside through the crowd. I can't believe how many people there are crowded into the gallery, but of course, it's not just for me, it's for my retro prints photographs. Most people are here to see Kanye Nkosi's sound installation, fresh return from her Sao Paulo show and all the resulting controversy. It's the first time I've seen it in the flesh. The thing is gore deluxe, red and meaty, like something dead turned inside out and mangled, half collapsed in on itself, with spines and ridges and fleshy strings and some kind of built-in speakers, which makes the name even more disturbing. Woof and tweet. I don't understand how it works, but it's to do with reverb and built-in resonated speakers. It's culling sounds from around us, remixing ambient audio, conversation, footsteps, glasses clinking, rustling clothing through the systems of its body, disjointed parts of it inflating like it's breathing. It's hard to hear it over the hubbub, but sometimes it's like words, almost recognizable. But mostly it's just noise, a fractured music undercut with jarring sounds that seem to come at random. Sometimes it sounds like pain. It's an animal, right? Or alive at any rate. Some lab-manufactured Plastech biobreed with just enough brainstem to respond to input in different ways, so it's unpredictable. But not enough to feel pain, apparently. It's gratuitous. She could have done it any other way. It could have looked like anything. It could have been beautiful. Like something you'd put in your lounge, Jonathan says. Please, Kendra. It's supposed to be revolting. It's that whole Tokyo tech grotesque thing. Actually, it's so fucking derivative. I can't stand it. Can we move along? I run my hands along one of the ridges and the thing quivers, but I can't determine any difference noticeable in the sounds. Do you think it gets traumatized? It's just noise, okay? You're as bad as that nut job who threw blood at her at the Josie exhibition. It doesn't have nerve endings. Oh, wait, sorry, it does have nerve endings, but it doesn't have pain receptors. I meant, do you think it gets upset by all the attention? I mean, isn't it supposed to be able to pick up moods, reflect the vibe? God knows. I think that's all nonsense, but you could ask the artist. She's over there schmoozing with the money, like you should be. Woof and Tweet suddenly kicks out a looped fragment of a woman's laugh, which startles me, before sliding down the scale into fuzzy electronica. See? It likes you. Don't be a jerk, Jonathan. There's a journalist who wants to interview you, by the way. And he's pretty cute. My stomach spasms. This is another thing Jonathan does to keep me in my place, to make it razor that we're not together. My shrink tells me I'm still in love with him. Well, actually, he didn't. He let me figure that out for myself, which cost a little more wasted time, when apparently he had the answer all along. I glance over at my pictures, partially obscured by the swelling crowd. Only one of my prints has turned out perfect. An image that appears abstract, but on closer inspection resolves itself into an anonymous blur against the edge of a doorway. Wrecked wood and the liquid swirl of graffiti, the paint still wet and dripping in runnels, so that it is all sharp focused texture. The others have not come out so distinctively, and Sanjay is still a tad uncertain about the whole shebang, about how the critics will take it all. The overexposed and the under, the bleached, washed out, oversaturated with color, the ones with blotches and speckles and stains like coffee cup rings, or the buttress of white that frame the horizontal top and bottom, where the canister has cracked and let the light slip inside. My favorite is called Self-Portrait, a print from a decayed piece of film, 1 meter by 3.5. It came out entirely black. Jonathan propels me in the direction of Sanjay, who is standing in deep conversation with two other people. The one is clearly money, some corporati culture patron or art buyer. The other, I realize with a shock, is Kanye Nkosi. I recognize her from an interview I saw, but she is so warmly energetic, waving her hands in the air to make a point and grinning that I can't match her with her work. I realize I can't deal, and checking that Jonathan is intent on pushing through the queue at the bar, I detour back towards the entrance in the open air, only to skewer someone's foot with the blue velvet heels I bought for the occasion. Hey, easy. Oh, God, I'm sorry. I really, really need a cigarette. I wonder if I can make it down to the Spaza down the road and back before Jonathan notices. No worries. You're the artist, right? Yeah, or the photographer anyway. The thing, woof, that's not mine. Yeah, I'm Asiame. I'm from Sonar. Oh, right, the journalist. Hi. Vaguely, I note that he is cute, but I'm distracted by nerves. He touches my shoulder, which only irritates me more. Do you have a drink? No, someone's getting me one. Okay, listen, if you want, we can talk later. I know it's your opening. You've got things to do, people to schmooze. Actually, can we get a smoke? We're not the only people hanging outside. I catch a cigarette from a blonde, familiar from other events, with messed up hair, cut ugly on purpose. I inhale deeply from the cigarette. So, can we do the interview? Get it out of the way? All right, he says. Gets a mic into his phone and points it at my mouth. What's with the old school? Didn't you read the press release? Let's say I didn't. I quote it from memory. Kendra Adams' use of non-digital format is inspired by her fascination with the capacity for error. Okay, let's skip the press release. Okay, it's just film is more interesting than digital. There's the possibility of flaw inherent in the material. It's not readily available, so I have to get over the net. Some of it has rotted or it's been exposed even before I load it into the camera. But I don't know that until I develop it. Like Self-Portrait? It's not just the film, it's working without the automatic. The operator can mess up too. Did you mess up? That's the great thing about working with damaged materials. You'll never know. Actually, it's the same in audio. Digital was too clean when it first came out, almost antiseptic. The fidelity was too clear. You lost the background noises, the ones you don't even pick up. But the sound is dead without the context. They had to adapt the digital to synth analog. You can do the same thing in photography, apply effects, lock out the autofocus, click up for exposure, and all we're doing is trying to recreate the manual. It's contentious now, though. The audio text is saying it's been nonsense all along, just nostalgics missing the hiss of the recording equipment. Who knows? So you're looking for the background noise? Yeah, or something like. I dropped the cigarette, twisted under my heel. Got enough? Yeah, I'm good. The gallery seems less oppressive. I'm less freaked, even when I overhear some overgroomed loft dwellers giggling into their wine. Oh, and this, I'm so tired of statement, like she's the only angst child ever to embrace a distorted body image. Oh, I quite like the undeveloped because she is, still young, coming into herself. The artist in flux, emergence. Well, precisely, it's so young, you can't even tell if it's technically good or not. It's all just so damaged. I'm about to lean in to point out that self-portrait is actually not that at all. That under the black is a photograph of a photograph clutched in my fingers, captured in a mirror with a reflected flash of light. That it's all meant to be damaged. But then I realize I don't have to make my motives transparent. And then I'm distracted by a flurry of activity at the door. There are people shoving, wine spilling from glasses, yelps of dismay. This is a private function? Jonathan yells, spouting cliches at the rush of people in black pushing through the crowd, their faces blurred like they're anonymous informants in documentary footage. It is so disturbing, it takes me a second to catch on that they're wearing smear masks. Another to realize that they're carrying machetes. A few people scream, sending out a reverb chorus from Woof and Tweet, the crowd pressing backwards. But then the big guy in front yells, "Death to corporate art!" And Emily, the woman who dissed my work, laughs scornfully. Oh my God, performance art, how dreadfully gauche. And there are murmurs of relief and snickers, and the living organism that is the crowd now pushes forward again to see. Asiame grabs my arm and pulls me back out of the front line because I haven't moved this whole while, just as one of the men or woman grabs Emily by her hair and forces her to her knees, spitting with rage. Don't you dare make me complicit in your garbage. The black-clad one raises the machete, pulling back Emily's head by the roots of her hair, exposing her throat. She raises her hand to her mouth, pretends to stifle a yawn. Are you going to chop me into itty-bitty pieces now? Please, this is so melodramatic. And it is. The crowd is riveted. But I didn't think this kind of promo stunt would be Sanjay's thing. The man jerks her head back further and, bowing his legs, moves his arm as if he is going to slice across her throat, only at the last instant, so late that she winces back involuntarily, deflecting to a sideswipe. Not at her, but at Woof and Tweet just in front of them. The thing emits a lean crackle of white noise. The audience is rapt. Camera phones clicking as the others move in, 5 of them, one guarding the door, to start laying into it. It is only when the artist starts wailing that it becomes apparent that this was not part of the program.
And that is Lauren Beukes reading from Moxie Land. Lauren, can you hear me?
I can. I'm just trying to turn
good.
around.
Good. Is this the end of the excerpt?
It is, yeah.
Fantastic.
I was going to read longer, but I think we're out of time.
Yeah, we have to wrap it tightly, and we'll get another reading in the post game. This is really marvelous. I forgot to say that Kendra, the protagonist here, her thing is taking photos, taking analog photos and developing them. And here we see how protesters come in and sort of bust this this art exhibit. And we won't give it away because there is a connection to some of the other protagonists, and everything is sort of intertwined. Here Lauren is going to sit back down. I have to wrap the show, but Lauren is going to be with us until the bottom of the hour in the post game. Lauren, this was absolutely wonderful. Will you be back in Second Life now every day?
Definitely. I can't sit down though, so I'm just going to be standing in Second Life all the way.
You have to right-click the chair and then choose sit here.
I know, but we're about to go to the after party, so there's no point in sitting.
Are we?
Yeah.
But I'm old. I need to go to bed. Well, it's plus life. I live a minus life. So big congratulations also, because we're reading a Zoo City from Zoo City has won the Arthur C. Clarke Award 10 years ago. You wanted to read from that. We're going to keep that for the post game, and we'll also be talking a little bit about there's a wonderful short film on your website, Glitter Boys and Ganglands. I
Yep.
just saw earlier, you work in TV and you dabble in comics. That's of course a total understatement. And on
Yeah,
the
like New York Times best-selling comic. Thank you very much.
New York Times best-selling comics, oh boy. What is much more important than the New York Times best-selling comic thing on your resume is that you wrote for SL Magazine, which I did not know.
I
What
just saw them on the ground.
Yes,
That's so
we
cool.
have them here on the ground. Camera,
It's
please.
amazing.
We're going to wrap now, but the camera needs to go down on the ground here with SL Magazine. Had nothing to do with Second Life, right? Nothing.
No, nothing to do with Second Life. It was actually Student Life.
Oh.
Yeah.
Student Life is all about sex and stuff. I gather from the
yes, it is absolutely
covers.
totally. That was one of the magazines that I wrote about. Sex workers for. I did some really interesting interviews with people all around Cape Town in different aspects of the sex industry. It was the kind of magazine Kendra would write for. Like that's where I was. That was kind of the perspective I was working from. Oh well, she would photograph for. I don't think she would write for them. But yeah.
So I'm going to go through my credits. Thank you guys for coming. And while I'm going through the credits, everybody can put in the local chat what they are reading right now and what they would like to read and what they would like to recommend to read. And maybe this is all the same thing. Just put it in the local chat. We'll save that. Any recommendations? The Second Life Book Club is happening every Wednesday at 12 o'clock Pacific time. Want to thank again Lauren and our audience. Wonderful, colorful audience today. You can get in touch with us via SL Book Club at Draxtor.com. The show is produced by Strawberry, Linden, Ruby, and Shala the Super Gecko, and myself. The set was built by Ruby Geek. She's the location manager and master builder. Avatars are made by Silas, Ruby, and Kralos. Special thanks to Marianne McCann, Theanine, Brett, and Patch from Linden Lab, AJ McDowell, and Arduin Schwartzman, and all the moles over at Linden Lab, of course. There is a tip jar on the side if you have some loose Linden shekels floating around in your avatar pants, or if you don't wear pants, if you have them, just drop them in there. We work with tips to recommend authors, share ideas, critique. Contact us slbookclub@draxtor.com, or ping Jared the Bot. That's Jared Bot is his avatar name. Again, I have to emphasize, don't forget to tip the volunteer staff and spread the word to all book lovers all over the grid. Now, next Wednesday is a different time. It's 5 o'clock Second Life time, which is 5 o'clock Pacific time. And our guest is Tracy Sorensen from Australia. She has a wonderful book called The Lucky Gala, and her avatar is also wonderful. So that's next week, 5 o'clock. Okay, take that note down. And yes, I'll see you all next week, right here on the Second Life Book Club.
Thank you so much. It's been lovely to be here.